You're busy, which means there's a lot of stuff to cover. After we're done here, we're going to have Hans Grunberg brief you. He briefed the council from, not from New York. He'll tell you where he is. After that, we should have Volker Pertz brief you from Khartoum. He's currently briefing, he should be briefing the Security Council, I think, under AOB, but he said he will do his best to connect with us. And then at 2:15, not breaking news, but very important issue, the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. The head of the forum will be here at 2:15, and the speakers will include the Brazilian Minister of Indigenous Peoples, along with Dario Meja Montalvo, chairperson of the forum, and Naishwara Masago, a Maasai leader. I'll just give you some updates on Sudan, and of course Volker Pertz will have more updates in about an hour or so. You saw, I think, this morning the latest appeal from the Secretary General to the leaders of the Sudanese Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces to immediately cease hostilities and restore calm and begin a dialogue to resolve the crisis. The Secretary General condemned the outbreak of fighting, saying the situation has already led to horrendous loss of life, including many civilians, and he warned that any further escalation could be devastating for the country and the region. He also condemned the deaths and injuries of civilians and humanitarian workers and the targeting and looting of humanitarian premises, which we've seen. He reminded all parties of the need to respect international law, including ensuring the safety and security of all United Nations personnel and associated personnel and humanitarian aid workers. The Secretary General urged all those with influence over the situation to use it in the cause of peace, to support the efforts to end the violence, restore order, and return to the path of transition. And as we told you, kept you updated over the weekend, he spoke to both Sudanese leaders, and he also spoke with the head of the African Union and the Arab League, as well as President Sisi of Egypt. And today on the ground, the trilateral mechanism, which is made up of the African Union, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, otherwise known as IGAD, and the United Nations, reiterated the importance of having a humanitarian pause, urging the leaders of both the Sudanese Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces to adhere to it and include the assurances that decisions will be well communicated throughout the ranks of their respective forces. The trilateral mechanism said the pause would provide an opportunity to allow civilians trapped in conflict zones to access assistance and critical supplies, receive medical assistance, or just to get out safely. Only the Sudanese Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces have the power to ensure that the pause is maintained and can guarantee the protection of civilians, according to the statement from the trilateral mechanism. As you can imagine, this is all having a horrendous impact on the humanitarian situation in Sudan. We have been forced to temporarily halt much of our programming due to the fighting. 10 UN agencies and more than 80 NGOs have been running more than 250 programs in Sudan. We currently have no access into or out of the country, with the borders and the airport remaining closed. The crossfire in Khartoum airport has also reportedly damaged a plane belonging to UN's Humanitarian Air Service, which, as you can imagine, is critical to operations in a country like Sudan. This has the possibility of seriously impacting our ability to access remote parts of the country where the needs are highest. The Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Martin Griffiths, said he's horrified by the death of humanitarian workers, including 3 World Food Program colleagues. He's also disturbed by reports of large-scale looting of aid and damage to humanitarian facilities. The hostilities will only hamper our humanitarian response efforts at a time when needs are at all-time high in Sudan. Humanitarian colleagues are telling us that nearly 1/3 of the population, almost 16 million people, were in need of humanitarian aid in the start of the year, with some 3.7 million people displaced within Sudan. It is crucial for the fighting to stop so we can resume our efforts to help those who need it the most. This morning, the Secretary General spoke at the 2023 ECOSOC Forum on Financing for Development. He said the world is in a multidimensional crisis that is turbocharging inequalities with a devastating impact on the poorest and most vulnerable. He stressed that we have no time to lose and reiterated that the SDG stimulus plan, which asks G20 countries to scale up affordable long-term financing for all countries in need by at least $500 billion per year. The Secretary General added that in the longer term, we will not solve challenges by relying on financial systems that help to cause them, and underscore we need an economic system that is coherent, coordinated, and reflects today's global economic realities. That was all shared with you. He also spoke at the 22nd meeting of the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. This year's forum focused on intersection of human and planetary health, the climate crisis, and the rights of Indigenous people. He said that Indigenous people live on the front lines of climate emergency, but also hold many of the solutions to the climate crisis and are guardians of the world's biodiversity. The Secretary General said the UN stands with Indigenous peoples and added that the organization is committed to keep promoting their rights in policies and programming at all levels, amplifying all their voices. I will not go, I have a Yemen update, but we'll hear directly from Mr. Grunberg shortly. But I just did want to flag that a World Food Program chartered vessel berthed today at Al Salif port in Hodeidah, carrying 30,000 metric tons of wheat to support humanitarian assistance in Yemen. The vessel, the motor vessel at Negmar Chishek, sailed from the Ukrainian Black Sea port after the renewal of the Black Sea Grain Initiative last month. Around 85,000 tons of wheat is needed each month in Yemen. WFP underscores the continued donor support has so far kept famine at bay. Quick note from Mali. You'll recall that last week an escort convoy of our peacekeeping operations hit an improvised explosive device near Douentza as it was traveling towards a meeting point with a logistics convoy from the mission coming from Timbuktu. 2 peacekeepers from Togo were injured in the incident. They were then evacuated to Timbuktu, where they received medical assistance and are now recovering, for which we're glad. After the incident, the mission also deployed a search and detect team to clear the area before the convoy resumed movement. It safely arrived yesterday at the UN mission base in Douentza. The new special representative of the Secretary General for Haiti, Maria Isabel Salvador, arrived in Port-au-Prince over the weekend, in fact, yesterday. She is scheduled to meet this afternoon with Prime Minister Ariel Henry. Ms. Salvador will also hear later this week from Haitian actors, including civil society and women's organizations, before briefing the Council on the 26th. She looks forward to engaging with all sectors of Haitian society in supporting peace, stability, democracy in the country. She also told me she looks forward to engaging with you and will likely be here in person at the end of the month and will likely do a stakeout. In Peru, the resident coordinator, Igor Garafulich, is leading the UN team in supporting authorities to tackle the impact of heavy rains in the northern part of the country. They deployed experts to 3 most impacted regions to strengthen humanitarian work, assess damage and needs. Our colleagues have also distributed hundreds of kits to meet basic items such as food, health, hygiene, and water. WFP supported more than 2,000 families through its cash transfer initiative, and UNICEF has been providing treatment for acute malnutrition. Meanwhile, the UN Refugee Agency and IOM have been supporting camp management and coordination. Tomorrow, we will have 2 important guests tomorrow, we will have 2 important guests tomorrow. They are the co-chairs of the High-Level Board on Effective Multilateralism, and they are Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, as you know, former president of Liberia, and Stéphane Löfven, former prime minister of Sweden. They will be in person, in the flesh, here to speak to you. Yes, we will start with them at noon. Madame.
Steph, could you give us a little readout of the Secretary General's conversations with the two generals? What was their explanation for the violence that they're causing? And could you give us a little more information on UN staff? Are they being ordered to stay at home then, since you have no access to be able to deliver?
Yeah, I mean,
such?
most
What's
of the colleagues are sheltering in place, in either in compounds or in their homes in Khartoum. You know, given that continues to be heavy fighting on the street, people are clearly working from home. I checked in with a couple of my colleagues over the weekend and today. They're continuing to work, but I can tell you that the situation is extremely tense and frankly dangerous. On the phone calls, I'm not going to. I can't speak to them for them. I mean, the Secretary General passed on the same message to both: is an immediate stop to the violence, to the fighting, the importance of returning to the transition, and for political dialogue.
And sorry, just on the staff and such, you said, if I heard it correctly, the UN has halted much of its programs. So is it correct to say you've suspended? I don't want to use,
halt. I mean, the halt is a word that
you're pausing.
We're using halt. I mean, halt is, when humanitarian compounds are being looted, when humanitarian staff is being killed, when people are are sheltering in their apartment because there's heavy artillery going on. You can use halt, suspended. I mean, we're not going to ask staff to go to work when when clearly their safety is not being guaranteed. James.
So just first, how many staff do you have?
I had that number with me, and I will get you that. I will get you that number.
Okay, and in terms of what you're going to do with the staff, as you say, the borders are closed, it's terribly unsafe, people are sheltering in place. Is there a plan to move some of the staff out of the country if you're able to?
I don't want to, for the safety of our staff, I'm not going to telegraph what we're going to do. But clearly, at this point, the borders are closed and the airport is dangerous for obvious reason. We have about 4,000. We have about 4,000 staff countrywide.
Can you break that down to nationals?
I will break it down.
Okay. And in terms of that UNHAS plane,
yeah.
What else is in the UN fleet in terms of planes in Khartoum or elsewhere in the country?
We have the mission has a fixed wing aircraft and a helicopter. I think those are intact. I will check with UNHAS what is stationed currently in Sudan. We have about 800 international staff, with just over half, about 800 international staff, and the national staff is the remaining balance. Michelle, then Pam.
Given neither of the leaders seem to have listened to the Secretary General, is he making any attempt to speak to them again?
This has to be a concerted and coordinated effort by the United Nations, by IGAD, by the African Union, by leaders, by the Arab League, by leaders in the region. And I think the sense that the Secretary General had from his phone calls that everybody is working towards the same goal. I mean, Volker, who we hope will have on the line soon, I think will describe in very vivid terms what is going on the ground. The Secretary General will continue his phone diplomacy, but this is really a coordinated effort on behalf of the international community.
And what was the Secretary General's sort of reaction to this? Like, was there any warning that this might be coming last week?
I mean, Was the secretary, was the UN given advance warning? No.
No, but
I
like,
think
you know.
the one is, it's, I think from and again, Volker, I think will speak from his point of view, but I think from here, it's one of shock, of tragic disappointment in a sense that we're going backwards on the political transition. Sudanese people are literally caught in the crossfire when you have heavy artillery and planes being used in a fight between two security forces. Not to mention the impact on our staff, which the security forces, both of them, have a responsibility to keep safe under international law, and the impact on our humanitarian work and those who depend on it.
And then just one last one on Sudan. When he speaks about those with influence, are there any particular countries that he is referring to?
I think, it seems to me that just about every country in and around Sudan has different lines of communications to the leadership.
Okay, I have Ukraine later.
I look forward to it. Pam, and then Ibtisam.
Thanks, Steph. The question is, you've said 4,000 staff, 800 international staff. Can you explain a little of what the impact will be to not have them doing what they usually do, delivering food, anything else?
Well,
in
I
the
mean,
short
if
term?
you're,
Thank you.
if you are dependent on World Food Program food rations to eat, and those rations are not being distributed, it's pretty clear what the impact is. If you are relying on the World Health Organization for hygiene kits and health kits, and those are not being distributed, it's pretty clear. I mean, the impact is black and white. I mean, I read about the millions of people who need humanitarian aid in Sudan. Currently, they're not getting it because of what's going on. Ibtisam.
Just a quick follow-up. And to clarify, the 4,000 are mainly working in humanitarian operations.
And supporting the political mission as well, but the bulk in humanitarian.
So there were different reports, and you also said that buildings of the UN were attacked and looted. Do you have any idea who, from which party you were attacked, or you were attacked from all parties?
I will let, I will let Volker answer that. But I think one thing that we're also concerned about is, and we see in these types of situations, is the lack of effective command and control of troops on the ground.
Okay, just last one. Given the fact that there were threats of assassination of Mr. Bertis a week before that you talked to, and given the fact that the UN mission, the security of the UN mission is supposed to be granted by the Sudanese army, are you worried about the security of Mr. Bertis?
We're worried about the security of all our staff, right? It is not just, all security forces have a responsibility to keep our staff safe. All those who have effective control over an area have the responsibility to keep our staff safe. And that goes for everyone working for the UN mission, regardless of whether they're international or national staff. Michelle, I'll take your Ukraine question, and then Hans Grunberg is ready to move on to Yemen.
Okay, just a quick one on Ukraine grain. Do you have an update from the JCC? It seems like there's been no inspections again.
No, I don't have anything past the what's on the website. Okay, you may, and then I'll lift the...
Part of the world. Any update on Afghanistan and the suspension of the NGO UN workers?
No,
Nothing.
I mean, nothing good or positive to report. And trust me, if and when we ever get positive news, we will. Yeah, there's been no. I mean, it's still going on. Okay.